We
Yeah.
left helicopters, MRAPs, night vision goggles, all guns, munitions,
Hummers, yeah,
everything.
everything.
And obviously, we all have seen the videos of the Taliban walking around in plate carriers.
Right.
Now, at face value, it's just like, okay, the government's just overtly leaving all this and just feeding it right back to the military industrial complex to replenish.
Right. Well, I don't think that was their intention to arm the Taliban. I sure hope not. The Taliban is not exactly friends of the United States. We've been fighting them for 20 years, literally. Even though we kind of created them in the 80s in order to fight the Soviets. So they used to be our friends, and that's kind of how geopolitics works. Your enemies one year, your friends the next, and your enemies again the next year. So I think when the United States decided to pull out of Afghanistan, the hope and I think the belief was that the Taliban, not the Taliban, that the Afghan government, I think Hamid Karzai was he the president at that time, or yeah, I don't think it was Hamid Karzai, but he was the president for a long time. So Hamid Karzai's government and his successor, the belief was that they would use the weapons we left there to defend themselves against the Taliban and maintain a democratically elected democracy that's friendly to the West in Afghanistan. Obviously, that didn't happen. It very spectacularly did not happen that way. So as soon as the United States left, pretty much the local Afghan forces that were allied to the United States more or less immediately gave up and surrendered, and the Taliban just took over with barely a fight within a few days. So that's how the Taliban managed to get all of our expensive equipment that they can now use. Of course, they're going to have some trouble with getting replacement parts for the more complicated systems, like the Hummers and the attack helicopters are going to be difficult to keep running if they even know how to run it in the first place. But so they're not going to be able to make use of all that. But they've got plenty of stuff that they can make use of, like all the small arms stuff. But what's interesting about the Taliban is that now that they're in power, they are actually fighting, ironically enough, in their own insurgency. So they've got ISIS-K, they're the ones who I think did the terrorist attack in Moscow, and they're also doing terrorist attacks against the Taliban as well. So the Taliban have their own extremists that they're now fighting, and it's always easy when you're the rebel, but when you become the king, then you have to deal with all the problems of ruling. So now that the Taliban is in power, they have to maintain their power, and they have to worry about all the things that a governing organization has to worry about, including all the more extreme elements of their society that aren't happy with them. So the Taliban has actually been shifting their philosophy a bit, and not as much as we would like, of course, but the Taliban is now more focused on just maintaining Afghanistan. They are less interested in the international jihad, which is what the West is mainly worried about. I mean, that's why we went into Afghanistan in the first place, is because that's where Al Qaeda was based, and Al Qaeda did the 9/11 attacks, and so the United States felt that we wouldn't be safe while these internationally focused terrorist organizations have bases that they can train and be safe in Afghanistan. So the Taliban is actually not very happy with ISIS-K, and ISIS-K is a very international jihad type of group. So Taliban is fighting them. So ironically enough, the Taliban is kind of doing the job that we wanted the democratically elected government in Afghanistan to do in the first place. Now, that's not to say they're the same. Taliban is still very oppressive of women and of anyone who doesn't subscribe to their extreme ideology and religion. But from the United States' security perspective, it's not as bad as we thought it would be when we first pulled out. Yeah, but of course that can change. I mean, all it takes is a new leader to come on board, and then they shift their focus back to the international, or maybe ISIS-K manages to take over, and then we'll have a real problem. So yeah, I mean, it's a complicated situation, and uh, it's it's interesting and also tragic as well. Um, as soon as the Taliban took over, the United States and the West cut them off from any aid, of course, because they're officially our enemies, right? But a lot of that aid was going to feed civilians on the ground. And so, because the Taliban took over and the West cut off the aid, now Afghanistan has serious food insecurity issues. There's a lot of people going hungry there because they're not getting all that Western aid. And the West doesn't want to give them the aid because they figure the Taliban is just going to expropriate it and not give it to the people who need it anyway, and use it to fund themselves and fund terrorist operations, etc. So that's the concern. So yeah, it's a real tragic mess over there. Has been for quite a while.
What's up, guys? Thank you so much for taking the time to watch the interview. If you got anything out of this video at all, please like the video, leave me a comment, tell me what you thought of the video, tell me who you'd like to see on the show. I really appreciate the support. It goes a long way on these platforms, as you guys know. Most importantly, I have some excellent interviews coming up in the future that I'm really, really excited about. So please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of them. But that's it. Thank you for your support. I really appreciate it, and hope to see you again soon.